You're scrolling on Zillow or maybe Redfin, and you see it. A really nice house, 4 bedrooms, good neighborhood, decent schools not too far from work. Price tag $499,900. Your heart beats a little faster. You do the quick mental math. We make $130,000, $150,000 combined. Maybe we can swing $500,000, right? Hold on. Just pause for 5 seconds and let me be brutally honest with you. In 2026, a $500,000 home is no longer some luxury dream house. It has quietly become one of the most common financial traps millions of families are walking straight into, even families who make what used to be considered very solid upper middle class money. Right now, the national median home price across the United States is sitting somewhere between $425,000 and $445,000 depending on the exact month and data source. So what does $500,000 really mean in today's market? It puts that house in roughly the top 30 to 35% most expensive homes in the entire country. In other words, only about 28 to 32% of American households currently live in a home valued at $500,000 or more. Which brings us to the question a huge number of people are asking themselves right now: who can actually afford a $500,000 house in 2026 without putting their entire financial life on a razor's edge for the next 10 to 20 years? And even more importantly, why do so many households earning $120,000 to $160,000 a year, incomes that 10 years ago would have felt comfortably upper middle class, now feel like they're being priced out of a normal $500,000 home? That's exactly what I'm calling the $500,000 home trap. It's not that the house is bad, it's not that the market is about to crash tomorrow. It's that the $500,000 sticker price looks reasonable on the listing, but once you add in real monthly costs, mortgage, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, HOA fees, if there are any, and the inevitable surprise $15,000 to $30,000 repairs, a lot of families are signing up to be house poor for a very long time. Today I'm going to break it down step by step. What income level do you actually need to buy a $500,000 house and still live comfortably? Who is really buying these homes right now in 2026? And why, even when people can technically qualify, so many of them still end up trapped? If you're thinking about buying a house right now, actively searching, or just trying to understand how crazy the housing market has become, stick with me. You're going to want to hear the rest of this. Let's go. Okay, so we've established that $500,000 is no longer a nice house. It's now sitting in the upper third of the market. The real question is, how much money do you actually need coming in every year to own one of these homes without constantly feeling like you're one bad month away from disaster? Let's do the math. Real math, not the hopeful calculator math most people do when they're excited about a new listing. First, the rules banks still use in 2026, the famous 28-36 rule front-end ratio. Your total housing payment, principal, interest, taxes, insurance. PT should ideally be no more than 28 to 31% of your gross monthly income. Back-end ratio. All your debts combined, mortgage plus car loans plus student loans plus credit cards, should stay under 36 to 43% depending on the loan type. Most people get approved somewhere in that range, but getting approved and being comfortable are two very different things. Let's run the numbers for a $500,000 house right now using realistic 2026 conditions. Assume current 30-year fixed mortgage rates are sitting around 6.6% to 6.9%. That's where they've been hovering lately. Here are the 3 most common down payment scenarios. Scenario 1, minimum down payment 5% equals $25,000. Loan amount $475,000. Monthly principal plus interest approximately $3,040 to $3,120. Add property taxes $500 to $800 per month, depending on the state. Homeowners insurance $180 to $280 per month. Total monthly housing cost roughly $3,900 to $4,500. To keep housing at 28% of gross income, you need approximately $167,000 to $193,000 gross household income per year. If you push it to 36%, which many people do, it drops to about $130,000 to $150,000. But at that level, you're already very stretched. Scenario 2. Solid 10% down $50,000. Loan $450,000. P&I approximately $2,880 to $2,950. Total PITI plus maintenance buffer approximately $3,700 to $4,300 per month. Comfortable income 28% approximately $158,000 to $184,000. Stretch 36% approximately $123,000 to $143,000. Scenario 3. Classic 20% down $100,000. What used to be normal loan $400,000. P and I approximately $2,560 to $2,625. Realistic total monthly cost approximately $3,400 to $4,000. Comfortable income 28% approximately $146,000 to $171,000. Still stretched at 36% approximately $113,000 to $133,000. Now, here's the part most people don't talk about. Those numbers above are just principal interest taxes and insurance. They don't include maintenance and repairs. Experts say budget 1 to 2% of home value per year. That's $5,000 to $10,000 per year, or $420 to $830 per month. Utilities higher in bigger homes. HOA fees, if the neighborhood has them, can easily be $200 to $500 per month. Furniture, landscaping upgrades. When you first move in, when you add a realistic maintenance buffer, the true monthly cost of owning a $500,000 home in 2026 usually lands between $3,800 and $4,800, sometimes more in high tax or high insurance states like New Jersey, Illinois, Texas, Florida, or California. So if we use a more conservative and honestly more realistic personal finance guideline for 2026 ideal housing, less than or equal to 25% of gross income implies you need $182,000 to $230,000 plus household income to feel truly comfortable. Still reasonably safe, less than or equal to 30%. Implies $152,000 to $192,000. Doable but tight / house poor territory. 35 to 40%, $115,000 to $164,000. That last range, $115,000 to $164,000, is exactly where millions of families are trying to buy right now. And that's why so many people feel trapped even after they close. Next, we're going to look at the people who are actually buying these $500,000 homes in 2026, because the profiles might surprise you. Stay with me, part 3 is coming up right after this. So, if the math shows that you really need around $150,000 to $190,000 plus household income to own a $500,000 home comfortably, and even more if you want breathing room, then who is actually closing on these houses right now in 2026? Because people are buying them. A lot of them. Here are the 4 most common real-world buyer profiles you'll see across the country today. Profile 1. High-earning dual-income couples, often dinks or young families with no kids yet. These are the classic power couples of the current housing market. Household income $180,000 to $300,000 plus per year, sometimes way higher. Typical jobs: software engineer plus product manager, doctor plus nurse practitioner, lawyer plus consultant. Two people both working in tech finance or sales. They're usually in their late 20s to mid 30s, no kids yet, or maybe one very young child. They live in the expensive suburbs or desirable urban adjacent areas. Bay Area, even outside San Francisco. Seattle suburbs, Boston Metro, Denver/Boulder. Austin/Round Rock, Raleigh-Durham, Orange County, parts of Northern Virginia. For these households, $500,000 to $600,000 is often their starter home or step-up house. They can put 10 to 20% down. Their debt-to-income ratio stays healthy, and they still have money left to max out 401ks, travel, and save for future kids. They're not stretched. This group is probably the most comfortable $500,000 buyer in 2026. Profile 2. First-time buyers with serious help from family, bank of mom and dad. This group is growing fast, and it's one of the biggest open secrets in today's market. Personal income might only be $90,000 to $140,000, single or one strong earner, but they're able to buy because parents or grandparents are giving or loaning a large down payment, $80,000 to $200,000 plus cash gift or intra-family loan. That big chunk of cash lets them put down 15 to 40%. Avoid PMI. Keep the monthly payment manageable even on a $90,000 to $120,000 income. You'll see this pattern a lot in coastal cities, but also increasingly in mid-tier markets like Charlotte, Nashville, Phoenix, Salt Lake City. Without that family help, these buyers would be looking at $350,000 to $420,000 homes or renting longer. Profile 3. Buyers in still relatively affordable large states. In many parts of the country, $500,000 still buys quite a lot of house. These buyers are often in Texas, outside Central Austin, North Carolina, Raleigh, Charlotte suburbs, Georgia, Atlanta, Metro, Tennessee. Nashville suburbs, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Indiana, Ohio, parts of the Carolinas, Missouri. In these markets, $500,000 frequently gets you 4 to 5 bedrooms, 2,500 to 3,500 square feet, newer construction or well-updated, good school districts. Sometimes even a decent yard for families earning $140,000 to $220,000. Combined, this price point feels much more reasonable, and they're not nearly as house poor as someone paying the same amount in California or New York. Profile 4. The house poor buyers, the ones most at risk of the trap. Household income $120,000 to $160,000, often too decent but not spectacular salaries. They qualify using FHA loans 5% down, VA loans 0% down if eligible. State or local first-time buyer programs, sometimes adjustable rate mortgages, ARM to get a lower initial payment. Their debt-to-income ratio is usually pushed to the absolute max, 40 to 50%, sometimes higher. They get the keys, but then almost no extra money for retirement, very little emergency fund. One major repair, medical bill, or job loss can start a dangerous spiral. This is the group that most often falls straight into the $500,000 home trap. They technically afford it according to the lender, but emotionally and financially they're living on a very thin margin. Short pause for emphasis. So those are the 4 main groups actually buying $500,000 homes right now. Next, we're going to talk about why even some of these buyers, especially in groups 3 and 4, still end up feeling trapped, even after they get the house of their dreams. Part 4 is coming up right after this. So we've just looked at the 4 main groups who are actually buying these $500,000 homes in 2026. Some of them look very comfortable on paper, others not so much. But here's the uncomfortable truth: even many people in the comfortable categories Especially the dual-income couples making $180,000 to $250,000 still end up feeling financially squeezed after a few years. And for the people in the lower and middle ranges, the pressure can become overwhelming. So why does a $500,000 house so often turn into a trap even when the income seems decent? Reason number one, lifestyle creep hits hard after you move in. You finally get the house. It's bigger, newer, prettier than the apartment or starter home you had before. Almost automatically, life starts to expand to fill the space. You buy nicer furniture to match the house. You upgrade appliances. You get a bigger car because now you have a garage and a longer commute. You start eating out more because the kitchen is still half unpacked. Kids need new clothes, sports gear, bigger birthday parties. Before you know it, that extra $2,000 or $3,000 a month you thought you had disappears into a higher standard of living. The house didn't just raise your housing cost, it quietly raised your entire lifestyle cost. Reason number two, interest rate risk is still very real. A lot of buyers in 2026 took adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs, or shorter-term fixed loans to get a lower starting payment. Maybe they got 6% for the first 5 or 7 years. But when that teaser period ends or when they have to refinance because life changed, rates could easily be 6.57 or even higher again. A 0.5% jump on a $400,000 loan adds about $150 to $200 a month. A full percent jump, $300 or more. That's real money coming straight out of your monthly budget with zero warning. Reason number three, big surprise expenses arrive faster than most people expect. Houses are not appliances that just work forever. Here are the most common 5-figure hits that show up in the first 5 to 10 years. A new roof, $15,000 to $30,000. Replacing the entire HVAC system, $8,000 to $15,000. Foundation work or major plumbing repipe, $10,000 to $40,000. New windows throughout the house, $8,000 to $20,000. A flooded basement or sewer line backup, easily $10,000 to $25,000. Most people budget almost nothing for these. They think 1% of home value per year is just theory. Then the water heater dies on Christmas Eve and suddenly they're putting a $15,000 bill on a credit card. Reason number four, long-term saving and investing take a serious hit. When 35 to 45% of your take-home pay is already locked into housing, it becomes very hard to max out a 401k, fund an IRA, build a real emergency fund, save meaningfully for college, put extra toward investments that could grow over time. Over 10 or 15 years, that lost compound growth is enormous. A family that could have been putting 15 to 20% of income into retirement might only manage 5% or less. That difference can easily be hundreds of thousands of dollars by retirement age. Reason number five, job loss or income drop in an uncertain economy. The years 2026 through 2028 are not guaranteed to be smooth. Layoffs in tech finance and certain professional fields are still happening in cycles. Interest rates are still elevated compared to the 2010s and early 2020s. Inflation has cooled but not vanished. If one spouse loses their job or gets a pay cut, that $500,000 mortgage doesn't get smaller. Many families are now one major income shock away from serious stress, missed payments, or even foreclosure. And finally, the comparison nobody likes to admit, renting the same house often costs 55 to 75% of the true cost of owning it. In many markets right now, especially outside the most expensive coastal cities, you can rent a comparable 4-bedroom house for $2,200 to $3,500 a month. Meanwhile, the true all-in cost of owning that same house is $4,000 to $5,000 or more. The renter gets to invest the difference in the stock market, move easily if the job changes, never worry about a $30,000 roof, and still live in the same quality of home. That gap is why more and more financially literate people are asking themselves, is owning really winning right now? Or is it just a very expensive status symbol So yes, plenty of people can technically buy a $500,000 house, but actually affording it month after month, year after year, through life's normal ups and downs is a very different story. That brings us to the final part. What are the smarter alternatives in 2026? If you don't want to fall into this trap, we'll cover that next. Before we wrap up, let's zoom out for a moment and put this $500,000 price tag into a bigger global picture. Because how expensive or normal that number feels really depends on where in the world you're standing. First, let's compare a $500,000 house in the United States to other developed countries in 2026. In Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom, especially in or near major cities, 500,000 US dollars often buys you surprisingly little. In Sydney, Melbourne, Vancouver, Toronto, or Greater London, that budget typically gets you a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in a decent area or a small older house way out in the suburbs or commuter towns, sometimes needing serious renovation. In those markets, $500,000 is very much an entry-level or middle-of-the-road budget, not a comfortable family home. Now flip to Germany, Japan, or South Korea. In cities like Berlin, Munich, Tokyo, Osaka, Seoul, or Busan, 500,000 US dollars converted to local currency can still buy you a genuinely nice home. You're often looking at a modern 3 or 4 bedroom apartment in a good urban district, or even a small detached house in the suburbs with decent land. Property taxes are usually much lower, maintenance costs are more predictable, and building quality tends to be higher in many of these places. So in those countries, $500,000 still feels like a solid middle to upper middle class purchase, not a stretch or a luxury. That contrast shows something important. The United States has developed one of the most uneven housing markets among rich countries. In some regions, $500,000 buys a spacious family home in a good school district. In others, it barely gets you inside the city limits. Now let's look forward. What's likely to happen to prices between 2026 and 2035? There are 2 realistic paths, and both are being debated right now. Path 1, the optimistic scenario. Interest rates gradually stabilize and settle somewhere between 4.5 and 6% for the long term. Supply slowly catches up in many markets as more builders come back online and zoning rules loosen in some states. If that happens, real home price growth could slow dramatically, maybe only 2 to 3% per year above inflation. In that world, $500,000 could start to feel more reasonable again by the early to mid-30s. The median house might climb to $600,000 or so, but the $500,000 price point would no longer be considered upper third. It would slide closer to the middle of the pack. Path 2, the more likely baseline scenario. Persistent supply shortages in the most desirable areas continue. Aging population and immigration keep demand strong. Construction costs stay elevated because of labor shortages and material prices. In this case, $500,000 becomes the new median or slightly below median house price in many parts of the country by 2030 to 2032, especially if inflation runs hotter than expected. That means what feels expensive today will feel more like the standard family home in just 5 to 7 years. But the affordability problem doesn't magically disappear, it just shifts upward. The new trap price might be $650,000 or $700,000. Either way, the long-term trend points to one thing: housing in the United States is likely to keep consuming a bigger share of household income than it did in the 1990s or 2000s, unless something big changes in policy migration patterns or construction productivity. So when you're deciding whether to buy that $500,000 house right now, ask yourself, not just can I afford it today, but also where will this payment fit into my life and the market 5, 10, or 15 years from now? That brings us to the end and to the most practical question of all. What are the smarter moves in 2026 if you want to avoid the trap? We'll cover realistic alternatives next. So let's bring it all together. A $500,000 house in 2026 is not impossible to buy. Plenty of people are doing it right now. But whether it's actually a smart financial decision depends almost entirely on your specific numbers and your tolerance for risk. Here's the clear summary of who should and shouldn't go for it. You should seriously consider buying a $500,000 home if your stable household income is at least $160,000 to $180,000 per year, preferably higher. You already have a solid emergency fund covering 6 to 12 months of all expenses, not just the mortgage. You can put down at least 15 to 20% so you're not starting underwater or paying heavy PMI. You've run the real numbers, including maintenance, taxes, insurance, and a buffer for surprises, and your housing cost still stays under 30% of gross income, ideally closer to 25%. You should probably walk away or at least wait if your household income is only $110,000 to $140,000 and you don't have a large down payment gift or family help. You would need to stretch to 35% or more of your income just to cover the house. You're planning to rely on an adjustable rate mortgage or minimal down payment to barely qualify. You're not comfortable living very frugally for the next 5 to 10 years to make the numbers work. If the $500,000 house doesn't quite fit right now, here are 5 smarter, lower-risk alternatives that many financially savvy people are choosing. In 2026, one buy in the $300,000 to $420,000 range in a high-growth but still reasonably priced area. Many excellent suburbs and mid-sized cities still offer solid homes in that bracket, with strong appreciation potential and much better cash flow. 2. Keep renting a comparable place and invest the difference aggressively. If owning costs you $4,000 a month all in, but renting costs $2,600 to $3,300, that extra $800 to $1,400 a month in a low-cost index fund can compound into hundreds of thousands of dollars over 10 to 15 years. 3. Relocate to a state or region where wages are strong, but housing is meaningfully cheaper. Places like Texas outside the biggest metros, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, parts of the Midwest and Mountain West, still offer good jobs and homes that cost 30 to 50% less than coastal or high-demand markets. 4. Consider house hacking. Buy a duplex, triplex, or small multifamily property, live in one unit, and rent out the others. The rental income can cover most or all of your mortgage, taxes, and insurance, turning homeownership into something that actually builds wealth instead of draining it. 5. Wait 12 to 24 months. If you believe interest rates will trend back toward 5.5 to 6%, even a 0.5% drop can save you $150 to $300 a month on a $400,000 loan, which adds up to tens of thousands of dollars over the life of the mortgage. Here's the bottom line, the one sentence I want you to remember. A $500,000 house is not impossible to buy. The real question is, are you truly willing to pay for it with your financial freedom for the next 10 to 15 years? Because that's exactly what you're signing up for when you stretch to make the numbers work. There's no shame in choosing a different path, one that lets you sleep better at night, build wealth faster, and still enjoy a great quality of life. Thanks for listening all the way through. If this helped you think differently about your next move, whether it's buying, renting, moving, or waiting, drop a comment and let me know what you're leaning toward. Until next time, make the choice that gives you options, not just a bigger house. Take care.